Welcome to the Main Street Business Insight Podcast,
featuring the stories of America's downtown and neighborhood entrepreneurs.
There's so much about being a Main Street business that is intertwined with what it means to be part of a community.
The impact that it has on creating jobs, occupying vacant storefronts, improving the quality of life, like this is a big deal.
What advice would you give to other Main Street businesses?
Investing in yourself is the most important thing that you can do.
What was that experience like for you to reach out and, learn from others?
Any entrepreneur getting into business, I highly recommend find the people that you trust that'll tell you the thing you may or may not want to hear when you need to hear it, and who will stand by you in helping to solve your challenges.
Hey, I'm with Mileyka. Some of you may know her. She's, I would like to say you're very famous in the Main Street world and probably beyond, but we're here in Miami in the Alapata neighborhood. It's so good to be with you, Mileyka.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, so for those that have listened to the show in the past, we always like to start with the journey, the story. And so I want to turn it over to you. Maybe tell us a little bit about your journey to this whole world of community and place building.
Something that I wasn't expecting in my life as I thought about my career as a young person. I came down to Miami to go to the University of Miami, got a scholarship, and stayed here. But at the end of my first semester, I was really homesick. And I told the ladies in the cafeteria at UM, I am so sick of this cafeteria food. Can I please go somewhere to get my hair done? I'm Dominican, hello. So I needed to get my hair blown out, and I needed to eat some kind of comfort food. And they brought me to Alapata, and that completely changed I felt that place saved me at that moment.
Was it like a feeling of home?
Yes, it feels like everybody is your cousin. People knew me without even knowing me. People were so, it just felt like home. I grew up in a hair salon because my mom and my aunts do hair. So walking into that hair salon and smelling the special smell of a blow dryer, when they're like,
the heat.
The heat of the blow dryer and just the smells and the sounds and the music and just going across the street and eating mangú con los tres golpes, which is like this Dominican breakfast dish. It was just really nostalgic for me. It was just a moment where I felt saved from, a place that was really unknown to me because I didn't know Miami. I don't know anybody in Miami. I've been in Miami for probably 3 months, and I was just really, really homesick. So that's what it was. And then when they brought me back to my dorm room, I just opened up this big old map. As in Nairobi, we had maps, and physical maps only, because and I'm looking at this place called Alapattah. Oh, this is where I was, and I would tell people, oh yeah, I went to Alapattah and I had this food and I got my hair done. Like, oh my God, you went there? Like if I had done, a big thing. So, but then when I look in the map, I'm like, oh my God, this place it's like really right next to the airport, to the east of the airport. It's to the west of like downtown and the hospitals, and like there's all these things, and then 36th Street that brings you all the way to the beach, and I'm like, this is just perfect place.
Were you studying city planning? Because it sounds like you had a planner mind already.
I wasn't, but I just like to be comfortable. I like to have things close by. It had so many metro rail stations, and I'm like, whoa, why are they talking so bad about this place? This place is really cool. It has all these things around it. Why would it not be, a nice place? But it had a different connotation, So, okay, I just decided to kind of gather my friends from UM and come and clean the park and go, read to the kids at the nonprofit.
Wow.
And kind of got involved as a volunteer for like a long time. And to the point that at about 2013 or something, one of the nonprofit asked me to kind of lead it because we're in the red, and I know how to help businesses and help us get out of the red. So I kind of did that, and then saw that the challenges that the community was going through as I got deeper beyond the volunteer were deeper than what a small nonprofit could do. So I went on to the YMCA thinking maybe at the Y we can make it happen. It didn't really happen like that, and a great friend, Manuel Ochoa, visited Miami when he worked with NALCAP and told me about everything that NALCAP is. And I'm like, oh my God, but before that, there was this another mentor that it became a mentor after this, that had a prosperity study for Miami. And I just went right after her and said, yes, that's what we need in Miami. That's what we need in my community. So between meeting her, she told Manuel to come down. We met, but this happened in the course of 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
It didn't happen
Okay, it
immediately.
wasn't overnight.
It wasn't overnight. And then when Manuel came, what ended up happening is that I took a leap of faith and I left my job.
Wow.
And I just was like, okay, I'm gonna take my savings
This
and
is
I'm
commitment.
I'm gonna just do this equitable development action plan. I was sponsored by the South Florida Community Development Coalition, got a grant from NALCAP, and I was the project lead, and I got the community together because right before Manuel came, I would always visit the businesses and hang out and buy clothes, get my hair done, eat at the restaurants, whatever, and I would read their letters, like. The ladies, when I went to get my hair done, like, oh, mija, can you please read this? Because they don't speak English.
Yeah.
So I would translate what's saying, and I would start reading, like, we're buying your house for like 2 cents. Can you sell it to me? And I'm like, no, they're trying to buy your house. Or, this is what's happening. So,
oh my goodness.
So what I started to hear from them is like how things are starting to change, how someone bought this place and demolished it. We started seeing a lot of demolitions, and by seeing all of that, when I worked in that previous nonprofit, I'm like, okay, a small nonprofit, we need more beef into this. So when I saw Manuel and I saw the power of a national organization, and he spoke to me about Main Street as well, and I'm like, okay, let's do this equitable development action plan, and let's get these people that have been tugging at my ears about, we gotta do something because we don't want to lose our business. We gotta do something because my rent went up. We like, what would I do if I don't have this, And the more I studied the history of Alapata, the more I understand the value of these micro businesses that created this microeconomy and where Miami was before they were there. So at least this part of Miami. So after we did the Equitable Development Action Plan with small businesses, residents, renters, owners, landowners, service providers, and so on, we finished it. And then I tell the community, look, this is the report. And they're like, okay, so what now? Nothing, that's it, we did the report. They're like, oh no, we're gonna implement this.
We have to execute.
We gotta execute it, because who's gonna do it? The city's not gonna do it, nobody's gonna do it, Mileyka, you gotta do it. So we submitted our 501c3, and that's what the Allapattah Collaborative Community Development Corporation was born.
Wow, it's amazing. And just as a show note, so your development plan, we've had at Main Street America posted on our site. We'll make sure we post it into the show notes, because I think people would be really interested in reading through, especially after they hear our conversation, because I think it was really good at structuring community engagement and involvement, but also lots of clarity around how to tackle difficult issues around displacement. So we'll make sure that folks have an opportunity to take a look at that in the show notes. Let's talk a little bit about the pace of change. So hopefully the way that we have the camera set up, Mileyka, you can see there in the background, you have the city of Miami.
My beautiful city of Miami.
And we're in Alapata, so you can get a sense, our viewers can get a sense of the proximity to Miami Beach and downtown Miami.
Brickell.
Yeah, and so the pace of change, all over the country has been accelerated, but perhaps nowhere more so than Miami. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your perspective, kind of the Miami experience, and how its growth has impacted your neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that Miami, it's like a honeymoon. Miami has, a lot, literally outrageous growth due to foreign investments. People love to invest in Miami. A lot of high wealth companies are moving here after the pandemic. A lot of high net worth individuals are moving down to Miami. Citadel came to Miami. Jeff Bezos lives in Miami. A lot of, Hollywood people and California people and San Francisco people and Seattle people and New York people are coming to Miami, and that's great. But I think that the challenge there was the lack of regulation of how all that wealth is really going to benefit Miamians. I think that was the oversight that we sometimes we need to not only see the benefit, but the collateral damage of whichever benefit it is, right? So despite the impact of climate change and sea level rise, we see this continued investment that has literally put a lot of pressure on our historic communities, because our historic communities happen to be highest ground. Why? Because when Flagler came down, he built the railroad in the highest points of Miami. And who were working? Our Black and brown folks. And that's where we settled, and that's where we have been historically. So those communities become the hot tickets when it comes to real estate.
Especially with all the recent flooding and climate change issues, right? So sort of a push towards higher ground.
Yes, so we have experienced that, seeing higher rents, a lot more demolishments and developments, and not having any historic preservation in our community, because people feel that if we have any historic preservation, we won't be able to make modifications, or we won't be able to renew our community, and a lot of misinformation about historic preservation. So that's what I feel. At the end of the day, the other big impact is the number of people that have left our community. Because rents are so high.
Yeah.
The number of businesses that we keep losing because the cost of commercial rent continues to go up. The inability for them to buy their storefronts and kind of restart anew elsewhere. And that's really unfortunate, because that's the American dream slipping away from our community.
Yeah.
And that's what we are trying to prevent.
Yeah. And along those lines, I meant it's quite visible, but Alapata has this amazing, wonderful identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's known as the heart of Miami for Dominican history and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the plan looks at this, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, with all the growth, like tactically, what kinds of programs and activities is the collaborative involved with that really look to preserve and protect that identity?
When we created the Equitable Development Action Plan, it was mainly thinking about anti-displacement tactics, policies, and programs and conversations with key elected officials and so on. It was more like an advocacy plan. However, that plan was done in 2018, and we kind of put together the nonprofit in 2019, and then what happened in 2020?
Yes.
So as we were getting ready to ramp up, we get this pandemic, and our number one focus had to shift into high gear to helping the small businesses and preventing the closure of these businesses. So a lot of what we do, like the biggest percentage of what we do, is in economic vitality, helping the small businesses access capital, helping the small businesses have the business acumen that they need to move their business forward, to make sure that they have an exit strategy, to make sure that they are profitable, to make sure that they find other ways to market their business and to truly have resilient businesses. Because one day it could be a pandemic, another day could be a hurricane, another day could be a flood, another day could be some regulation that lowers the number of people that are buying from you, which happened last year during the summer. So, and a lot of your core clientele moving out of the community.
Yeah.
So making our businesses more resilient was one of the main things. The other way that we did that we're kind of focusing on that is deeply researching our history of our Dominican community and communities in general in Alapata, and the importance of their impact. How have they made it different? What has been their contribution over the decades, and how have they impacted not only the city of Miami, but also the United States?
Yeah, the storytelling aspects.
Yes, in the historic aspect, because nobody has ever understood how long we've been here. We're just here. We're just making it happen every day, and focusing on our family, and focusing on our neighbors, and having a safe community, and making ends meet in a way, but never looking at the collective impact that we have had for more than 6-7 decades.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we're doing is starting signature events that bring so many cultures together, that connects with the Dominican culture. literally just to bring the community together, to educate, to heal, and to really enjoy, right? So this year we're planning to have El Festival del Plátano, the Plantain Festival. And it's about how many ways can you prepare plantain. There's like plantains are very like a Dominican dish, a very iconic Dominican dish. Dominican baseball players always talk about plátano power, and it's because it's so iconic of the Dominican culture. But it's also used a lot in Africa. It's also used a lot in Asia. It's also used a lot in other parts of the Central America and the Caribbean. So how do we bring all those cultures together and celebrate something that makes us so unique? So we're planning to do that in
really
Hispanic, in Hispanic Heritage Month.
Really smart. Could you talk a little bit about? I think when people think about displacement, especially on the business front, that it's associated with like big city dynamics, because I think historically that's where a lot of the sort of development pressures have been. What we've seen post-pandemic, however, is that now you have small towns with remote work and people, moving to small towns or whatever. And I think that even in our small town main streets, there is a growing concern around displacement. Are there some learnings, advice that you might share with your Main Street colleagues that maybe didn't think about displacement as a part of their work?
Yes, own the dirt.
Own the dirt.
If
Love
you
that. Mark it down.
own, if you own your dirt, if you own your community, the homes in your community, the storefronts, if you make sure that the icons in your community own, they can't be displaced. And also, aside from owning, the assets, and also understanding how the public assets in your community are being stored by your elected officials and being part of that, an integral part of that process. So number one, private land, own the dirt. Make sure that your small businesses own their storefronts, that legacy families in your community own their homes, and also make sure that you are connected to your city, county, and public, and whoever manages your public assets, to make sure that you are an integral part of how that is stored. That is one way. The other way is that as Main Streets, we need to be facilitators. Facilitators for growth, for resilience, for open mobility, for harmony, and for making sure that we build more leaders. We need to bring the community together to avoid the isolation, to create those social bonds, because that's how we make our communities together, and that's how we are stronger when we talk to our electeds, when we talk to a new developer that's coming into the community. That's how we build a stronger voice.
I love the concept of own the dirt, because it's not only about sort of being able to sort of protect, allow business to exist without like huge rental pressures or whatever, but you're also building generational wealth with ownership, which is so important to community.
Yeah. And one more thing, I think that building leadership is important.
Yeah.
I think that we need to get out of our own way and like look around our community and be in a relentless search for leadership, because that torch needs to be passed. And like something could be nice and beautiful for 20, 30 years, but who's going to keep it after that?
Yeah.
And after that,
Yeah.
and after that. So it's building a culture of building leadership so other people can have that torch.
Yeah. It's really leads into another form of resiliency. The more people in your community that have leadership and capacity in that area, even if you have some people moving away or whatever, like you don't lose the ability to continue what you've started, because you've got that built-in leadership and capacity. It's wonderful. One of the other things I want to talk about is certainly the Small Business Anti-Displacement Network. You've been actively engaged. You mentioned Manuel and I. For those that are listening, Manuel and I were colleagues at the National Main Street Center back in the 90s, and so I have such a fondness for working with him. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the network itself, its purpose, because we might have some people that want to get more actively engaged, and I know that they are growing and expanding. So could you talk a little bit about them?
Sure. So SBAN, as we call it, it's an amazing initiative at the University of Maryland where practitioners come together to implement best practices, share best practices, figure out how to keep that American dream alive. Because businesses don't start with $1 million. They can, of course. I mean, if you have the $1 million, that would be great. But like entrepreneurship is essential to growth, but entrepreneurship happens with an individual, with an idea, with families, with communities that have a need that someone can supply, and then working together, making that possible. It's that American dream of, I'm gonna start this business, and that business ends up putting your kid through college. It's that small business that ends up putting your kids through baseball camp or something like that. So I think that, SBAN is helping us identify how do we keep our communities knit. Because if I regard small businesses and commercial corridors as that fabric that brings us together. Not everybody's gonna gather at your living room, but a lot of people can gather at the barbershop. A lot of people can gather at the bakery. A lot of people can gather at the restaurant. So it's those commons, although they're private businesses, they become public spaces, third spaces for our communities, and that is why keeping businesses in place, it's important, which is what the Small Business Anti-Displacement Network is doing.
Yeah, especially when you think about, in many ways, how we've lost community. So much of our lives are spent online. It's our small businesses where it's sort of like the one place we often can come together.
Yes.
Whether that's to your point, a barber shop, to a bookstore, a coffee house, and I think that's the next really evolution of small business, is a recognition that they're an important component of our community fabric.
Yes.
All right, so last month, you attended the Main Street Now conference in Birmingham. It was so good to see you there. But this one probably had a little bit more special meaning than maybe some of the others that you've been to over the years. You received the prestigious Mary Means Leadership Award, and so rightly deserved. I wonder if in your own words, you could maybe talk a little bit about what that achievement meant to you.
Well, don't make me cry. I wasn't able to speak that day, and I had to write out my thoughts afterwards because it was just really emotional for me. Because representation matters. Because I am on the shoulder of so many people who came before me that were never ever acknowledged for all the work that they've done. So it was like the validation of their sweat equity, of the dreams, of the investments, of all those immigrants that gave so much, and later many of them were displaced, So and we're never acknowledged, never understood, and probably never even regarded as history or impactful when they in fact have been, right? So to me, it's like Main Street brought to Alapata our understanding of our community's cultural authenticity matters, and that their entrepreneurial spirit is important, and that passion that they have to achieve that American dream is possible, and that we're it's validation in a way, it's, a valid part of the fabric of America, of Miami, of our community, and this is really what it's, America's made of. It's tiny businesses that little by little grow. At the end of the day, the Mary Means Award is a huge responsibility to uphold Mary Means' name, and it's a responsibility for the rest of my professional life, so yes, I think, I was completely taken off guard, because the other thing that made me really emotional is that it was my team who submitted me very, very quietly, the determination to go beyond me, get letters from the mayor, get letter from this person, from the other, and my board of directors, my team, people that truly understand the work that we're doing and the meaning that the award has, not for Mileyka, but for Alapata, the people who came before me, and for America, for all their main streets to see this is possible.
wonderfully said, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do the podcast because you didn't have a chance to speak, and obviously totally understand why. But I think it's important, that message that you're carrying, that it's yes, you definitely had something to do about it, but you're carrying your community with you, and I think
Yes.
that's a really powerful statement about leadership in general. That it's greater than we as
Yes.
our individuals. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about where you go from here and what's the future of Allapattah?
If it goes as we like, it's very bright. We see business owners owning their storefront, families owning their dwellings, whether it's an apartment or a home, businesses growing. We see generational wealth being created. We see staff buying their businesses when people want to kind of move it down, and keeping community and businesses in our community. That's what we foresee. We see communities again bringing people together. We see us learning from other communities that have gone through this. I mean, I'm learning a lot from San Francisco and an organization called MEDA, Mission Economic Development Agency. We learned a lot from them. And they went through this in the early 2000s, and I'm here going through this in like 2010s, 2015, not knowing anything about them. But the more we go out there, the more we learn. So always hungry to learn more, but also become a best practice model. Work with my city, my county, my electeds, my community, everybody in the community, because it's not about me. I just want to be a facilitator for these things to happen, so we can become that best practice model that America desperately needs. Because right now there's a lot of communities that are going through this, and we're trying to figure out how do we manage investment that we need, because we're not against the progress, but how do we manage that with the human factor, with the open mobility of our communities, with the historic preservation of our communities? How do we merge our past and our future in a way, right?
Yeah, no pressure, but this work is so incredibly important, and there's so many communities out there that are looking at what you're doing and creating that best practice model. And so I would just like to say that we're so appreciative of the work that you're doing, because we're learning, the other main streets are learning, the small towns are learning. You're really going into areas that especially in terms of like of identity, community engagement, and commercial displacement that so many communities are beginning to face, and are really trying to wonder what the next step is. But you're past that, and so we can learn from you. You're not there yet. I know what you're saying, but like you've began to craft the plan. You're executing, and so that's a first step for communities.
At least we know what the inputs are.
Exactly. Every research starts with the inputs. Let's close out with what's the best advice you received, especially as the Mary Means Leadership Award winner, that you pass on to your colleagues out there?
Number one, be grateful. And in that gracefulness, give yourself grace, because this is not an easy job. I always tell my husband, this is a thankless job. I cannot do this expecting people to like me or thank me or anything like that. And literally that's how I go out there. But it's also about seeking knowledge and best practices. We need to communicate. We need to know what you're doing. I need to share what I'm doing so we can have that conversation. I would also say multiply yourself, share your knowledge, and build new leaders who can pass the torch and build things to new heights. There's things that, there's places that I'm not gonna be able to bring Alapata, that someone else is gonna have to do that, right? So we also need to kind of let go of the ego sometimes and like really get out of the way of the mission and understand that the best thing we can do is build new leaders, learn from others, and share.
Yeah, that is beautiful, and we all owe you a big thanks. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.